In lesson 11, we're going to draw a connection between what we have been learning about functions and computer programming. I'm going to be using a language called Ruby today, and I'm going to show you how we set a variable. So let's say I have a variable x, and I'm going to set it to 0. I simply have to assign x to 0, and then when I call the variable x, it would be set to 0. And then let's say I want to loop through numbers 1 through 5. And let's say that for each number, I'm going to insert it into a function. Let's say that this function is going to take the x. So if I start with 1, my x will be 1, and I'm just going to print it, right? So what would that look like? I wrote the code there, and you will see it'll print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's kind of what we call a loop in computer programming, right? It's just like going through some numbers. In this case, in Ruby, I just have to type the 1 through 5 in parentheses, and it will print it out. Now, what if I wanted to do some sort of manipulation with this variable, right? So instead of it being x, it could be like a variable, like a function, right? And I could multiply the x by 2. So what would that look like? And you can see that I did that, and we get a 2. 1 times 2 would be 2. 2 times 2 would be 4. 3 times 2 would be 6, and so on. So that's what would happen. Now, what if instead I didn't want to start with 1 and I would start with 2, and I wanted to go all the way to 8? And what if I wanted to do a more complicated function, and I wanted to multiply it by 2 and then also add 3? We can still do that, and I'm just printing out the results, right? So this is sort of the application of how a function works in computer programming. We use them all the time with our logic. So you might have heard something called the function machine, where you were just learning about linear equations. And so what I'm going to demonstrate now is, what if I want to have the output be an ordered pair? So I'm going to loop through the numbers 0 through 5 as my x's, and I'm going to print out ultimately the ordered pairs, right? My function in this case is going to be made out of x plus 2, and that is all I'm going to do. And so I'm going to go ahead and just print them out, and oops, I forgot to add the x in there. It's only printing out my y value, so let me go ahead and try that again. And in this case, I'm going to set my y variables, and I'm going to loop through x equals 0 through 5. And my function in this case is going to be, let me first type in an array to just kind of hold these values together so that they can print nicely as ordered pairs, because that's eventually what we want. We want our input, our x value, our domain, and our range, our y values, to come out together. So my function here is going to be a little bit more complicated. This is the notation that we used for exponent in Ruby. It's going to be a double asterisk. So my function is x to the power of 2. So I'm going to start with the number 0, plug it in. It's going to be 0 to the power 2, and so on. And I'm going to go ahead and run this function, and I'm going to print the values by simply asking the computer to give me the values for y, and you can see them show up as an ordered pair. Now, once I have them in ordered pairs, I can go ahead and graph them. And when I graph them, let me graph x to the power of 2, there we go. You will see that this is not a linear equation. You'll find that anything with an exponent is not a linear equation, right? So that's the value that we see from how we would do this in computer programming, but this has applications for everything. Now, what if I wanted to go into negative numbers? Because you see my ordered pairs here match the positive values in my graph. But I really want to see what my ordered pairs would look like if I started with, let's say, a negative 5. So I'm going to go ahead and, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Let me go and get out of there. What I wanted to do was start with a negative 5 all the way to a 5. And I'm going to take those values, Put them in the place. That's what the z is a placeholder, so don't get so confused about the z. But in computer programming, we have to have certain placeholders. I'm going to print them out as ordered pairs, so I'm going to print out first the x value and then x raised to the power of 2. So I think in your head, what would negative 5 to the power of 2 be? That would be a 25. So let me print these out. And as you can see, negative 5 x is going to be a 25y, and that matches the graph that I'm getting for that particular graph. And then my negative 4 is going to be a positive 16, and that also matches. So the computer went ahead and calculated these correctly. And this is sort of what we want when you are trying to figure out the ordered pairs, is get the right value for the domain, for the range, and graph them into an equation. And you want to be able to apply these two situations.